Hey, today I'm going to talk about a topic that's kind of personal for me. It's something I haven't really been able to get over for almost 10 years of reading comics. And it's what I personally feel is the biggest mistake in DC Comics history. This is the kind of thing that literally keeps me up at night, and every time I read a story involving the characters I'm about to discuss, I can't help but think, man, what if? I'm talking about the death of Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. And I'm not saying it was a mistake to kill Queen because he was one of my favorite characters and I'm just salty about his death. Perhaps mistake is a bit too strong of a word. What I really mean is, it's a missed opportunity. Oliver Queen's death takes place in Green Arrow number 101, published in October of 1995, and written by Chuck Dixon, who's an otherwise great writer, by the way. But first, let's back up for some broader context. Dixon's run was coming in the wake of arguably one of the most influential writers to ever tackle the character of Green Arrow, writer and artist Mike Grell. Grell's Arrow saw a turn towards realism. Queen leaves the fictional Star City to grow roots in the more concrete Seattle, Washington, where he and his wife, Dinah Lance, aka Black Canary, operate a flower shop called Sherwood Florist, which, come on, love it. There were no trick arrows in Grell's continuity, and Oliver's identity was only a secret to those people too lazy to connect the fairly obvious dots. He rarely interacted with other members of the Justice League or otherworldly villains, and Grell also gave Queen more of a political bent, harkening back to the hard-traveling heroes days of Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, the godfathers of the character. Grell had the Green Arrow take on corporations and politicians, not supervillains, even going so far as to renounce his own U.S. citizenship at one point. Despite its flaws, namely the fridging of Dinah Lance in The Longbow Hunters, Grell's run was the most realistic, the most visceral version of the character the world had ever seen. So when Grell ended his run with the character, he left a kind of vacuum. A lot of people were calling for the Green Arrow to return to his more lighthearted origins. They wanted trick arrows back. They wanted supervillains. And this was the 90s, so garish costumes and violent punch-ups were very much in vogue in comics at the time. But still, Grell had his loyalists, and so the heirs to the Green Arrow series struggled to find their footing. And so they decided to deploy the #1 comics writing cheap trick: kill someone. Killing a beloved character is, frankly, too easy. It allows you to milk that grief for years of story arcs, for one. And for another, if you want to completely retool a series by trying out new characters or a new style or tone, like DC was planning to do by shifting Connor Hawke into the role of Green Arrow, if you want to do those things, the first thing that comes to mind is, let's just kill everyone and start over. It feels lazy. And finally, anyone who's ever read a comic book knows that when somebody like Oliver Queen dies, they never stay dead. And so it doesn't even really have the intended emotional impact on the reader. It's more just the frustration of, oh great, now I don't get to read this character for a year or so until they bring him back somehow. So now let's look at the specific circumstances of Oliver's death. What happened and what could have happened instead. In Green Arrow number 101, our titular hero is involved with a group of eco-terrorists called the Eden Corps. They've set up an aircraft with a bomb on it and an autopilot route towards Metropolis. The terrorists have all abandoned ship, but somehow, before they did that, they convinced Oliver to put his hand on a dead man switch so that if he removes his arm from the contraption, the bomb will detonate. The bomb's also on a timer. I don't know, it's very comic booky. Anyway, enter Superman. Fantastic 90s mullet sporting Superman. As the plane is careening towards Supes' home base, the two heroes are discussing their options. Superman could speed the whole plane away to a desert or some isolated area like that, but in order to beat the ticking clock on the bomb, he'd have to travel at such high speeds that it would break Oliver's neck. He could try to detach the bomb from the plane, but he might accidentally cause it to go off, and who knows if the plane will still fly with the structural damage ripping the bomb out of the fuselage might cause. In the end, Oliver decides to quote-unquote nobly go down with the ship and crash land in a forest or a body of water or something. I don't remember, and it doesn't matter. What's really interesting is this other option that Superman brings up during their conversation on the plane, which is rerouting the plane to crash somewhere safe, then using his heat vision to sever Oliver's arm, leaving the switch depressed, and then he could carry Oliver to safety. Had Superman overridden Oliver's will and done this, it actually would have made for infinitely more interesting stories. Think about it. Oliver Queen's identity is so intimately tied to his skill with a bow. Think about how devastating losing an arm would be to his character, like a career pianist having their hands crushed, or a chef losing their ability to taste. Would Oliver go on fighting crime? Would he retire? Regardless, there would certainly be an inner struggle as the character fought to find self-significance and confidence again, if indeed that were even possible for him. That's what I want to read about, that struggle. Compared to some of his superpowered co-workers in the Justice League, Oliver's only human, so give him the scars as proof that the fight he's fighting is real and has consequences and occasionally demands sacrifice if you want to stay in the game. Personal sacrifice, not a sidekick or a damsel in distress. Because again, killing or maiming your supporting characters as some kind of motivating factor for your main hero is cliche and laziness, not just in the comic book world either. And what's more, we have Paralympic level archers with one arm or no arms here in the real world. Representing people with physical disabilities in popular media is important. So create a new character to act as a mentor and build Oliver back up. Imagine the human drama you could show by having Oliver Queen, a world-class archer, brought down to absolute zero in regards to his shooting technique, being retrained by a Paralympic athlete. Oliver grumbling and moaning about what's the point, how can I go on? Meanwhile, this one-armed mentor looking at him like, are you fucking serious? It's not even that bad, dude. Be an adult. Consider how some of us have to live our whole lives. Losing a limb does not make you less of a person. But having Oliver Queen lose his arm is even more than a great storytelling opportunity. It would have tied up a nearly decade-old loose thread first unraveled by Frank Miller. In the final quarter of The Dark Knight Returns, published in 1986, an aged and semi-retired Bruce Wayne is preparing for a final duel with his old frenemy Superman, and Batman enlists the help of Oliver Queen. He designs a one-of-a-kind trick arrow especially for Oliver that weaponizes an aerosol form of kryptonite, which will weaken Superman just enough to allow Batman to deliver the finishing blow. But here's the thing. The Oliver Queen that Bruce Wayne meets in the far future universe of The Dark Knight Returns, that Oliver has one arm. What's more, Oliver alludes to the fact that he's always had it in for Superman ever since the two of them had some kind of falling out years prior to the events in the book, and he simply leaps at the chance to get a piece of the big blue schoolboy. Could this falling out have been caused by the fact that Superman, against Oliver's wishes, chose to sever his arm in the plane that day instead of letting him die a hero's death? The questions and speculation I had about this scene were always one of the most intriguing parts to me of an already masterful Batman story. Keep in mind that The Dark Knight Returns was published about 10 years before Green Arrow number 101, so it's almost impossible that Chuck Dixon accidentally set up this scenario that perfectly aligns with Frank Miller's canon in The Dark Knight Returns. But he deliberately chose to leave it by the wayside and not use it, which had the effect of spiraling Green Arrow into this kind of unwritable character for the next 20 years. Green Arrow has been rebooted and redesigned and de-aged over and over and over again since the Grell years, maybe more than any other major DC Comics character. Does he have a goatee, a hood, or a cap? Trick arrows or no? What's his history with Dinah? Is he still a millionaire or did he lose his fortune? Does he love chili? What makes Green Arrow a difficult character to write and an easy character to fuck up is perhaps a topic for another video, but the fact remains that today, every time I see Green Arrow on the shelf of my local comic book shop, I can't help but imagine what could have been. And that's why for me, killing Oliver Queen in Green Arrow number 101 was the biggest mistake DC Comics has ever made. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. I don't really know what the purpose of this video was. I'm just a dude with some opinions about comics, and like I said, this one topic was actually driving me crazy for years. I didn't even really research this thing at all. I was just pulling from memory, so if I fudged some facts, I apologize. I suppose if people really enjoy this kind of thing, I could always make more. There are plenty of things I'd like to rant about in the world of comics and video games and general nerddom, and if that's the case, I'll definitely make an effort to up the quality on future ventures like this. Not that I think there's any kind of hole in the market or business opportunity for white dudes talking about nerdy shit. I think that niche is definitely being served already. So, yeah, thanks for listening and keep telling stories.